had him on the show before. Welcome back, Ty. How are things?
Gentlemen, thank you so much for the invite back. It's great to be here.
Well, it's great to have you.
I'm sorry you had to hear my co-host say that he wouldn't eat a BLT, but he would put chicken on it and think it was a BLT still.
Well, I'm not going to eat just lettuce and bacon, but I would put lettuce and bacon on grilled chicken was my point.
Interestingly enough, my co-host Dan Rubenstein and I have had a similar conversation, not so much about that, but about the tomato aspect. I caught the tomato conversation there. I believe Dan is not a tomato guy either, at least not like a raw tomato on a sandwich guy. And so maybe you guys have something in common.
We should get to know each other.
Steve is a not anything food. He eats chicken bland, no mayo, no condiments.
No condiments. Yeah, no food on a stick. No tomatoes.
Isn't that the rumor about Dan Orlovsky up at ESPN? Doesn't he do something like that
right?
where he kind of has like a very standard meal and he always eats the same bland diet?
Oh, I'll have to look into that. Maybe I might have just found a new respect.
Somebody you could go to lunch with and not be weird.
You're one true God, Dan Orlovsky. Who knew?
All right, Ty, let's talk some college football here. And, can you ever remember a year, and I know we're not even halfway through the season, but we're just about to the halfway point. It seems wide open right now in terms of national champion. It seems wide open in terms of Heisman race. Can you remember a year that was this hard to predict, this far along?
Man, that's a really good question. And, Dan and I were just having a similar conversation, I think, off air yesterday about this. And it's been a minute since it just felt like there was so much up in the air. Like, I think we're starting to get a pretty good sense, a clearer picture for who the top teams are and who you can count on. I mean, Oregon obviously going to Penn State and getting that win is a pretty significant moment and probably the most significant, meaningful win we have seen so far this season. A handful of teams that I think you can count on, but otherwise, there really is a lot that remains in flux. And now as we get into October, hopefully we'll start to get a better sense for who else is trustworthy. I just feel like so much of the early conversation has been dominated by, so-and-so took a loss. Can they find a way to kind of like worm their way back into this playoff conversation? And I find that we're talking far less about teams that feel unstoppable relative to other years where it seems like that was the prevailing narrative through the month of September.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I want to circle back to that Penn State-Oregon game here in a moment, but just to follow up on that, I think that when NIL became a thing and there was all this talk about paying players, I know me personally, I was concerned that it would make it so the rich got richer and that we would only have, it would become like Major League Baseball, right? Where you go into a season, you feel like only 6 or 8 teams could win a World Series, or in this case, win a national title. Has it actually had the opposite effect? Has it opened the door that if you're willing to spend, like you look at, Ole Miss right now, or, there's countless examples out there of, you look at the SEC in basketball, for instance, and now it seems like everybody in the SEC's got a chance to win a national title. Has it had the opposite effect? Has it made it so that more teams now have a chance to win a title?
It's yes and no, right? The rich have definitely gotten richer. And given the fact that they can pay players and now there's some element of revenue sharing, clearly that gap between the haves and the have-nots has continued to widen. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. But the, I guess, X factor here in this conversation is if you're going to take a bunch of transfers and if you're going to pay them a bunch of money to come and play for your school, you got to hit. You got to make sure that they work. And in a lot of cases, they don't. We see far too many cases where you bring a guy over. Case in point, right? It was a big offseason story that Mekhi Hughes, running back from Tulane, was going to go up to Oregon. It was a huge blow to Tulane that they lost him. Mekhi Hughes isn't even playing for Oregon right now. That's how loaded they are. They're starting a true freshman. He might be their best running back, one of their best offensive players. So this is not necessarily an example of a guy not hitting, but I think what we are finding throughout the course of just this like added transfer portal NIL era is it doesn't always go the way you expect when you've got a big name guy from one school transferring to another. And part of that has definitely contributed to some of the instability that I think we've seen here pretty early on.
All right, you mentioned Penn State, Oregon. I know you were at the game. You're a Penn State guy, right? And your co-host Dan is an Oregon guy. What was that experience like for the two of you to be able to be in that environment and watch what was just a tremendous football game?
For those who have never been to a whiteout, it's a religious experience. If you're a college football fan, It doesn't matter who you root for. It's a religious experience. It was incredible. The game day environment inside that stadium is second to none. And I would strongly recommend it, as I said on our show, as like a bucket list destination for people who just follow the game closely and enjoy college football. So to that end, yeah, that was an incredible setting for a game. For us personally I'm a Penn Stater, Dan's an Oregon grad, it had a little bit of extra meaning as well. But I think our kind of lasting impression of that game is how it tightened up late, how the crowd got back into it, how it came down to the wire, how hopefully, speaking as a Penn Stater, it won't hurt Penn State's playoff chances the deeper we get into this season, provided everything else can stay on the rails. You wanted to see a good game. You're there for a whiteout. I would have preferred a different outcome, no doubt about that. But at the same time, the fact that we ended up getting a close game in the end, the fact that it was part of that environment was pretty cool.
One more Penn State question for you. I want to ask you about Trevor Pena. And Syracuse fans have kind of a complicated relationship with Trevor Pena, right? He was here and he put in his time here, and he was awesome last season with Kyle McCord. And then there was the whole controversy, I guess, with how he left and hit the portal and wanted more money. And it sounds like he didn't really think much of Ricky Collins at the time after during spring practice, and fans were really upset. Anyway, with all that being said, what is his role this year with Penn State, and how do Penn State fans feel about him and what he's providing them right now?
I don't think it's so much of a Trevor Pena thing as it is a receiver thing, as it is a passing game thing, as it is a Drew Aller thing at Penn State. I mean, you could truly swap in Trevor Pena with almost anybody else in college football who plays wide receiver, and it would be more of the same. We have seen this time and again at Penn State now. Receivers last year, right? Keandre Lambert-Smith went elsewhere, went to Auburn, had a good year. Now he's playing in the pros. Harrison Wallace down at Ole Miss has had a pretty good season so far. It seems that these Penn State receivers do better when they go elsewhere. And so I don't know if it's something in the state college water. I don't know if it's the scheme. I don't know if it's Drew Aller. It's probably a combination of everything. But my humble opinion, he would have been better off staying at Syracuse, because this is not a program at Penn State that has proven it knows what to do with a passing game. It has not been able to develop anything consistent on that front in a couple years now. And it's been a hot minute since they actually produced a wide receiver that was worth anything going on to the next level. So I understand if you're looking for a payday, I mean, to each his own. But outside of Tyler Warren, who we saw pop in 2024, Penn State's not had a good recent history with putting wide receivers, up a level and getting them ready for the next step.
And as you say that, there's probably a lot of SU fans listening to our show right now saying, I told you so, Trevor. Told you shouldn't have left. So, I think a lot of SU fans feel the same way, that he should have stayed put. Let's talk ACC now, if we could. And it, much like the national title picture is kind of a scrambled mess at the moment, the ACC is a scrambled mess at the moment. It feels like it's Miami, and then what? What do you have after Miami? So I'll ask you that. I mean, outside of Miami, who else do you see in this conference as being a legitimate, ACC title contender, which obviously means they could go on to the college football playoff? Or do you think it's just going to be a one-bid league this year and it's just going to be Miami?
Well, I'm not even going that far down the path at this point, because to the earlier point, right, there is a lot that's in flux right now. So I'm trying not to get too far out over my skis when it comes to playoff predictions. But you're right, it's Miami up here, and then a big old shrug. Like, I think we like Georgia Tech. I think there are reasons to like Louisville. I still think there are reasons to like Florida State, even a team like a Duke, maybe even a team like a Virginia at this point. I mean, that's where we're at now with this ACC conversation. And so I think you've got this cluster of maybe 5 teams, 6 teams below Miami that if you squint really hard, you can make a case for them. But it does feel like it is some sort of mess beneath the canes right now in the ACC. And even if we're not talking about teams in like that next tier down, we might be talking about teams like Wake Forest, who I'm not advocating for as any kind of ACC contender. But as we say on our show, they're plucky. They're playing with, I think, a renewed sense of optimism. The vibes are pretty good right now with the new coach, Jake Dickert. They're going to fight. And before long, they're going to find out that they can take one of these teams down that is perceived to be above them. Cal is another team that we could probably put in that same class as well. They've got interesting elements. They did get shut out against San Diego State, but also I think there's a fair amount of optimism around their quarterback situation and maybe what they could do. So I just look up and down this conference, and to the point, it does feel like it's Miami and then everybody else. And it's going to be a really interesting race to the finish to see who emerges kind of on that next tier down. But right now it's, like I said, it's a handful of teams ranging from Georgia Tech to Louisville to Florida State. We could put Duke, we could put Virginia in there. It's really anybody's guess.
Syracuse next plays SMU this week, and SMU's head coach Rhett Lashley has popped up as a favorite, not just a candidate. I think it sounds like he's one of the front runners for this Arkansas job. Curious to get your thoughts, and of course he's got ties to that program. He was a former Arkansas quarterback. How much of a better job is Arkansas than SMU? Is it a better job than SMU? And where does Syracuse kind of fit into the equation of best jobs in the ACC? And I think you probably know where we're going with this. Fran Brown. Everybody wants him to stay here. How many other jobs in this conference do you think are better than what he's got here at Syracuse?
Well, first and foremost, the Rhett Lashley situation is really interesting to me because SMU, you may recall, is playing in the ACC but not taking any money. And so They've got what I would classify as a resource advantage over many of their peers because it just seems like they're willing to spend stupid money to be part of Power 4 college football and bring this program to the next level. Obviously, they made the playoff a year ago, and Rhett Lashley was a big part of that. I think they really like him there. And so it would be interesting to see that if he does choose to pursue that Arkansas job, how SMU reacts. Do they swoop back in and try to give him some comically large contract extension or something to keep him where he is at? And by the way, Arkansas's athletic director made a statement saying that Sam Pittman did not have the resources that he needed to compete at Arkansas. I don't know if that is the same case at SMU, where again, they are spending kind of like crazy to try and be part of this thing on a bigger national level. That to me is fascinating. Whether or not he's got to pull back to the Arkansas job remains to be seen. But I've seen the same thing as you, that basically it's his if he wants it. So if that's the direction they decide to go, I think he's a very good coach. I'm curious to see if they have what it takes to kind of lure him away. As for where Syracuse is at in the pecking order, I mean, Fran Brown, I think very quickly has raised the profile of the Syracuse program. He is doing everything within his power to at least provide a proof of concept that this is a program that could be meaningful in the ACC, that can be part of the ACC conversation, that can attract better players to come to Syracuse to play football than perhaps we have seen in a good long time. And furthermore, Syracuse, which has long been known as kind of like a basketball destination, and we've seen this at other places, if he is the type of personality that can raise the football team's profile enough to get it maybe not at the same level as a basketball program, but somewhere close to it, you would hope then that more resources would follow. As for where does Syracuse rank relative to their peers in the ACC, I don't have a good answer for you. I really don't. I mean, more to the question earlier, the ACC outside of Miami right now feels like it is in a gigantic state of flux. And so I think all it takes on the Syracuse side is 1 or 2 good years, again, as a proof of concept to show that you can be part of that upper echelon of the conference. And then maybe the overall profile of that job is raised relative to the field.
After the Clemson win, there was, you talking about the pecking order. There were articles about Fran Brown being high on everybody's list in the SEC. What are the chances of Syracuse being able to keep a guy like this? And we saw Doug Marrone get the Bills job after taking Syracuse to 6-6.
I mean, look, I would hire Fran Brown to coach my team. I would be stunned if there aren't a bunch of places calling Fran Brown to coach theirs. Fran Brown seems like the exact type of guy for this moment in college football. And everything that he has said publicly seems to indicate that he has no intention of going elsewhere. It would almost be a bit of a betrayal if he decided to do it, even though I think everybody would understand that if he wants to, go to a program that's more of a blue blood or has a bigger war chest, everybody understands that this is sports on some level. But everything that Fran has said so far seems to point to the fact that he is not going to be somebody who sticks around for a year or 2 or 3 and then bolts. He's kind of in this for the long haul. So I hope for Syracuse's sake, they are able to retain him. I hope for their sake that he's able to continue building that program and maybe raise a profile. But it would be a stone cold stunner for me if there weren't a zillion places calling Fran Brown this coaching carousel cycle because it seems like it's going to be more active than a year ago.
Do you think that happens no matter their record?
What's that? That he would
that he's getting these calls?
I would assume so. Yeah. I mean, again, he seems like the perfect candidate for this moment in college football, where it is very much about vibes. It is not even so much about what you have done lately. It is more about going to a place where you feel like you are wanted, you feel like you are needed, you feel like you can be developed, and you feel like, you can contribute to something in a really meaningful way that pops on the national stage. Fran Brown is building that at Syracuse, even if the wins haven't fully been there yet. It seems to me like he is the right kind of guy with the right type of energy for 2025. So I would be stunned if there weren't a bunch of places at least inquiring about whether or not he'd be interested in leaving Syracuse.
Yeah, we are certainly sold. It sounds like you are sold as well. And
definitely,
Ty, we got to say that you are quickly becoming one of our favorite guests. Between your setup there, the audio, the visual, your content, we love having you on.
He knows what a BLT is.
I know. BLT Does this mean that my check cleared? That you're saying all the, is that what this means?
100%. We want more of it.
All right.
We love having you on, Ty. Keep up the great work. The Solid Verbal College Football Podcast. You're free to come on anytime. Hopefully we'll talk again real soon about some college football with you, Ty.
Anytime, guys. Thanks again.